Right.
And you're good to go. Take it away.
All right. Welcome, everyone. I appreciate you joining us today. We're going to get going here, started on getting your digital projects off to a savvy start with empathy. And I'm going to try to make this for you as much as I can. Just a little bit about myself as I get started here. And I'd love to hear about you. So while I'm talking, if you don't mind, maybe throwing in the chat maybe where you're joining from, your current role, and what you're hoping to get out of today. So I can kind of try to tailor it to fit the needs of the folks that are here as best as I can. But a little bit about me. I live in Lockport, New York, Western New York, Buffalo, Niagara Falls area with my wife and our two-year-old daughter, Ariana. I work as a professor at Western Governors University in the graduate program there for educational technology and instructional design. I'm going to be doing the SUNY CPD instructional design certificate program, which is going to be starting this fall and really excited about. And Megan, who's with us today, is going to be helping me with that. We were just speaking about that a few minutes ago. And I also work as an adjunct at SUNY Genesee, where I was an instructional designer previously. So I'm excited to be here with all of you today. And it's good to have everyone here and hopefully able to share with you some things that maybe you already know and can look at it in a little bit of a different light or some new things as well. What I want to really talk today about is how we can harness design thinking with really putting a key focus on empathy so that we can make truly impactful digital projects. And when I say digital projects, this can be used for really everything and anything that we're using or creating in the world of higher education. So, think online courses, think if you're an instructional designer, think if you're a professor and you want to update even your in-person classes, but maybe looking to put some things onto your LMS. This could be from an HR perspective, this can be how we're going to put together new trainings for employees and onboarding, or how we're going to house different forms and trainings throughout the year. We can use this from a peer-to-peer sharing standpoint. We can use it with our students and really wherever we're using it. But think big picture here, whatever you're doing in terms of digital projects, I think this is a great way to start to think about those things and put that together. So we want to talk, practicality here. We want to understand the diverse needs of our users, of our learners, and we want to think about what's been working across other fields as well and pull that into what we're trying to accomplish within higher education and even more specifically within whatever that project might be with our users or our learners or whoever is going to be engaging with us there. And the idea here that a lot of this is going to stem from or center around is design thinking, and design thinking is a really big and important idea. It can be used as an instructional design process model and how we work to sort of design instruction and create learning experiences, and it can be used in the fields of marketing and research and really anywhere. But whenever we're trying to put things together and we want to have sort of this solution focused approach, that's where we're going to use and implement design thinking. And there's 5 phases of design thinking, and we're going to talk about each of those 5. But the key here today that I want to make sure everybody really focuses in on is that empathize stage and how to use empathy throughout this process. So while we're looking to solve problems, while we're looking to design new learning experiences or new digital projects, how can we continually use empathy throughout that process? And that's what design thinking can really help us do with a focus there. That every stage of what we're doing and what we continue to do with that project, if we're looking at things with the lens of empathy and through that idea and perspective, we're going to be in a much better spot to reach the needs of our users. And why does empathy matter? I mean, empathy is a word that we use a lot and gets thrown around a lot sometimes, but we really want to think about that and what that means. And it means different things to different people. But I think really what we want to be able to do in this sense is to understand the different perspectives of our users or of our students, our learners, that they're coming to us. What are their expectations? How are they going to interact with whatever it is that we're creating and using, and what's going to really work for them? This isn't about us as designers. It's not about us as teachers or trainers HR professionals, whatever it might be. This is about our individual students and our users, and the more we can know and understand about them, the more we can take into account their knowledge, their skills, their abilities, and we can think about those things and prepare for those things, the better their experience is going to be within our project, whatever that might be. So as I mentioned, empathy is that first stage of the design thinking process, but I think it does a great job of sort of being our North Star, if you will, and it's a guiding force. And if we're always sort of focusing on that, it'll continue to play a role throughout the process, and especially as we're using design thinking and leveraging that. With constant iteration, which we'll refer to throughout. And when I say iteration, I mean, redoing things. We try this, it worked great, let's move on. But what can we do to make it better? Or we tried this and it totally didn't work. Maybe we need to blow this part of it up and start over here and do something a little bit different. So, iteration is, we want iteration always. We want to be doing things better and improving in using multiple sort of versions of things. Every chance that we get to improve, we want to make sure we're doing that throughout this process. And we want to be guided through that process with empathy. What is best for, again, our students, our users, our learners, rather than what's best or easiest for us as the designer or the instructor or so forth. So think about the other folks that are going to be going through this, and that's what we want to always be focusing in on. So what is the design thinking process? And some of you may be more or less familiar with this, and that's okay either way. I think the big thing that I always like to think about with the design thinking process is truly the fact that this is a non-linear design process. So we do this as we're not going to be set in stone or this rigid sort of static systematic linear step-by-step approach where I have to do this and then I do that and we sort of go in order, because I think when we're doing things like that, we tend to we're operating in silos, and we're not using the information at hand to help us improve as we go. And when we use and follow sort of a more of this nonlinear process, and we're agile and we're able to jump around and be flexible, we can use empathy throughout, and we can design learning experiences that are going to be best for our target audience. So the idea here of design thinking is the first stage, the thing that we want to always start with is empathize. And that allows us to learn about our audience that we're designing for. And whatever that design might be, whatever that project might be, the more we can learn about that target audience, the better we can understand their needs, their desires, the problems that they're facing, and how we can build instruction to help meet those needs and solve those problems. So we always want to start with that, really, in whatever we're doing, I think, to get a good feel for where we're at. But we can always go back to that throughout this process. So, in this diagram, I think it does a great job of really encompassing that we have this sort of, left to right feel where we empathize, and that helps us define. And then we can, define clearly what we're trying to accomplish. Then we'll start to ideate, where we brainstorm and come up with different solutions. Then we'll prototype, where we'll build out, maybe lessons or activities, assignments, web pages, software, whatever it might be. And then we can get that out to testing to see if it's working, and we can get feedback. But as you can also see with the blue arrows that are throughout here, we're always using each stage of this to really inform the other stages of this, and inform our process. And throughout this, when we're doing these things, we want to continually, bounce around here and take the information that we're learning and apply that wherever we can, however we can, and as fast as we can through that rapid iteration process. And we can do that with empathy, because we're thinking about what the issues are. We're getting these ideas that we feel are going to work. We want to prototype little bits at a time and get those prototypes, though, that design process here. If you're designing a whole course, build a module of what you think this is going to look like and get it out to some folks to take a look. When you get it out to folks to take a look at that one module level and you're testing it, you can get information, and you're going to learn so much about not only your target audience and users, but how this interactivity is. Are students able to move around the way you expect them to, or is it usable? Is the way it work? Is it accessible? All these different things, and you'll get new ideas or how it can be improved throughout that process. And you're doing this as you go. When we wait to the end, we are sort of stuck with this end product and we hope it works. And if it doesn't, well, now we sort of fall into that sunk cost fallacy where we've put so much time and effort into this that we're just going to try to force it to work because we don't want to go back and start all over. But if we follow the design thinking process and we're truly empathetic throughout this process, we can make those adjustments as we go, and we'll end with a finished product that has been seen by our target population and audience. It's been tested by them throughout, and we're going to feel a lot more comfortable about where things are and how we can move forward with that. So again, just that idea of being flexible, not being rigid, sort of bouncing around here throughout the process, and building, creating, designing, and implementing things bit by bit as you go. And what we really want to do when we're designing, and whatever it is that we're designing, is we want to recognize the shift that we're seeing across our, not only our learners and in higher education, but just across the world in general here. And we've really come from this sort of one size fits all approach to a society that really demands personalization and choice throughout. And it doesn't really matter what we're talking about. I think we've come to expect that from everything that we see and we do. We want things that are agile and dynamic and that are tailored to us and our personal experiences. We want things that matter to us. We want things that are going to be important and specific to our needs, and things that are easy to use, easy to function, easy to operate. And that's important. And the idea here of universal design for learning, I think, is always really important as well. And we talk about universal design for learning coming from universal design in general, and hopefully everybody's a little bit aware of that. And that could be, obviously, we could spend an infinite amount of time there. But when we do something where it fits for one person, it's likely to fit for other folks. And if we can create things that fit for everyone, then as different learning styles and different folks present themselves to us, it's just going to work for them in a way that they want it to. We're providing choice, we're providing options, and we're providing access to everyone here. And that's what we want. That's what we expect from everything we use our smartphones for, how we engage and act online, in what we do on a day-to-day basis. We want that personalization and choice wherever we can. And we've really moved away from, again, that idea of a one size fits all approach. We want to take into account that shift and continue to think about that. And as I mentioned, we've learned these things over the past 20, 30 years, especially with the increase in technology and access to the internet. And the smartphone has changed everything, certainly, in the last even 15 or 20 years, especially with how much we can now do from our pocket, really. So we come to expect things differently. Things are being marketed to us differently. We're engaging with products differently. We're seeing, video games changing. We're seeing the shopping experience for us change. We're seeing the way that we pay our bills and that we research and find information. The way that we learn has certainly changed. A lot of that by choice, and some of it even without choice, going through the experience of COVID when so much of learning was shifted to completely online. We've learned from all of these things, and it's important to take that into account. And as we all know, I think that, understanding what those experiences were like for each of us individually, but thinking about how they were for others is beneficial. And again, we get back to that idea of empathy. And that speaks to the larger shift here that's been going on in the field of instructional design, where we started with this idea of instructional design, which is really focused in on the instruction and creating instruction that meets the needs of the masses. And we want to do a good job. We want to be empathetic. We want to reach our users through the idea of instructional design. But often we're focused on the instruction there, and how are we going to meet our learning goals, objectives, outcomes, whatever it might be, through instruction and through that design process. But we're really starting to shift that focus now to more of a learning experience design approach. And these two things are very similar. It's still the same field, but we're seeing that shift in thinking where now the focus is more on the experience and how can we create learning experiences for our individual users, our individual learners that are going to, really hone in on what experience is going to be most beneficial to them, enjoyable to them, engaging to them, and reach them where they're at. And that's what our job is going to be whenever we start any of these digital projects. Again, as I mentioned, no matter how big or small, whether they're learning or sharing information, what's the experience going to be like for the user? And that's what we want to focus in on. And the analogy that I think best sort of encompasses that is what we have come to expect as modern users. This is going to be relevant to us as learners, but I think the analogy where we think about ourselves as consumers is really powerful here. So, as I mentioned, we're shifting from that instructional focused idea into the experience focused idea of design. And I think the best way to think about this is, if we think how we used to shop, for most of us, maybe even 10 years ago, certainly 20 years ago, the primary means of shopping was going to the mall, going to these big box type department stores where you had places like Macy's and J.C. Penney, Bon-Ton, and in the sort where, these are sort of cornerstones of malls and of strip malls and in that. And when you needed something, that's where you went. You went to these locations, you sort of packed up, drove there, and you're going there with the idea in mind of what you were hoping to get, but you were never really sure if they were going to have it, if they would have your size, your color, your style. What was going to be in the store that day was really up in the air, and there was no sure way for you to know what you were going to be getting. You're sort of at the mercy of that store. In those stores, they were certainly, the folks that were running and operating those stores were doing their best to create an environment that was engaging to the masses and that provided an opportunity for folks to find the types of products that they were looking for, styles, colors, all those things that would be relevant to that general population that might live in that area. But again, the focus there is on the masses. It's not on the individual. And we saw that with the process of going and needing to try things on, but also if you realize you didn't like something, the return process, whether or not you could even return things years ago, if there was a certain time frame on that. And certainly you'd have to go back to the store to return it. Are you just getting store credit? Can you get your money back? Those types of things. But now so much of it that has changed with the way e-commerce is really transformed. And we really, have seen Amazon be, the leader by a long shot in that, because what Amazon has understood really from the get-go is this is all about the customer experience, and anything that you read or watch or hear from Amazon and their CEO, it's always about that, the customer experience. And if any of you are anything remotely close to my wife, you're certainly big Amazon users, and there's packages coming and going, it seems like every day here. But what Amazon has done and what's allowed them to sort of corner this market is they've catered to the individual experience. You now can, from wherever you have access to the internet, log on and see, any type of thing that you can pretty much imagine, and you can find that what you're looking for. You can right away see reviews. You can see so many more pictures and write-ups and understand about that product before you buy it, so you feel comfortable purchasing it, which is even really a big difference from the way online shopping was even just 5 or 10 years ago when you didn't have that. But now things can get to you quick, 2 days or less usually. It's hassle-free returns. It's free to send things back, try it on, it doesn't fit. All those things that kept us away from online shop is Amazon has found an answer to. But the thing that really gets us into Amazon, and I think really helps the Amazon sales model, obviously, is your individual experience. If we were all to log into Amazon right now, nobody would see the same thing. It would all be completely different, because what you're seeing on a day-to-day basis on your Amazon account is based on your experience there, your previous shopping history, your search history, all those things. So you're getting a unique, individualized, tailored experience through that process that meets your needs and even anticipates your needs. When you add something to your cart, they're saying others also bought this, or you might want to look at that. So they're taking this information and the data that they have available to them, and they're creating this individualized experience that keeps you coming back for more. And that's really what we want to try to do with all of our digital projects and our courses is how can we use the information and the data available to us? How can we create unique, tailored learning experiences for our learners? We know two learners don't ever learn exactly the same, and we want to embrace the diversity of learning styles and needs. And how can we create these learning experiences that allow our students, our learners, people that are engaging with our work to work through this, to use this, to navigate this, to you know, learn and grow in ways that are most meaningful and beneficial to them. And that's what we want to try to accomplish with this idea of empathy and design thinking. So how do we go about doing that? Well, I think it's important to get off to that savvy start, and when we do that, it's really beneficial to spend the time early on to do things like empathy mapping, interviewing, finding information that's available to us, whatever's out there, to really understand who our target audience is and what their needs are. And the more we know about the people and the folks that are going to be engaging in our work and in our activities, the better we can meet their needs, and we can, really work to create things that will be beneficial to them. And that idea of universal design for learning and choice is important because we know people want choice. So let's find out what types of choices they might want. Let's find out what they need. Let's find out what their current knowledge, skills, and abilities are. And let's understand that. Let's think about that. Let's paint a picture of, our anticipated audience and the types of learners and folks that are going to be engaging with what we have. So as we're designing, we're always designing with that in mind. When we don't spend the time to do this at the beginning, when we don't spend the time to use empathy to get off to a savvy start, we end up designing for ourselves. Whether we do that, consciously or subconsciously, we're going to put in, sort of these inherent biases and implicit biases, and we're going to be biased based on our experiences and what we think will work and what we think would be best. And that's good for us if we're the only ones using it, but we're certainly not the only ones using this digital project. And likely we're not even the target audience. We're creating this for other folks. So in the absence of spending that time at the beginning to get off to this savvy start with empathy, we're going to default back to often our own personal preferences and things of that nature. So, take the time, build the picture, keep that in mind by doing things like mapping and creating these personas to really understand who your audience is and how you can best meet their needs. And then we want to regularly revisit that. Think about that throughout the process. That always needs to be sort of at the heart of what we're doing. We want to make informed decisions, and we want that information and that process to stem in large part from an empathetic approach where we're considering, what other people need, what their thoughts, feelings, and emotions are going to be about this, what are potential pain points for our target audiences that are working through this class, this project, this activity. Where can we anticipate these issues, and then how can we design to solve these problems before they even occur? And we can do that when we think about things empathetically. And this is often, I think, difficult, especially in higher education, because we have so many folks that are so bright and specific to their particular subject matter, especially, and things come very easy for us, and it's sort of second nature for us at times. But it's important to remember that, again, our target population and audience likely is not going to have that same experience, knowledge, skill, abilities that we have coming into this. So what seems simple and obvious is not always the case, and we want to make sure we're aware of that, and we're thinking about that throughout that process. And we're providing foundational skills and resources to help folks be successful. We always want to continue to try to enhance the user experience, our students' experience, the learning experience throughout, and we can do that again through empathy. And as I mentioned when we were looking at design thinking previously on the slide, we want this idea of rapid prototyping. So we're going to build out small bits and get those out for testing and feedback, whether that's with some peers, with previous students, with a target sample population. whoever you can get your available to help you and assist you. I think it's important to do this and sort of do it bit by bit and process by process. Again, if you're designing a 15-week class and you're going to have 15 modules, let's just design one to start and see if that's working, rather than spending all that time to get all 15 done and realize that it doesn't work. And what are students going to like from everything from, the way we lay out a course to the way that we expect them to click around to the types of fonts that we're using, templates that we're using, the styles of assessments, the choice in those assessments, what's going to work for other people. That's important. And when we build things out bit by bit, we can get that feedback, and that keeps that idea of that empathetic approach and the idea of our target audience at the heart of what we're doing all the time. When we sort of design in a vacuum and we just go, 15 weeks here, and it's just me and my computer working on this, I forget about who I'm designing for. And again, we fall back and end up designing for ourselves. And these things that are going on in our head make this look so obvious to us, but it might not be so obvious to our target audience and users. So the more feedback we can get during the design process, I think the more we can be sure that we're staying on track towards getting something done and completed here that's going to be truly beneficial to our users and enhance their experience. And we also want to make sure whenever possible, as this goes out and starts to be used, we're constantly being iterative, as I mentioned. And whenever we can use data analytics to try to understand where those pain points are and how we can best sort of address those and work through them, we want to make sure that we're doing that. So it's a constant process. We consistently want to be getting feedback, soliciting feedback, finding that information wherever we can, and using those data analytics and empathy to seek out and find areas of improvement so we can continue that cycle of innovation. As we continue to iterate and put out new versions of this and continue to work through this process, we're constantly thinking, we're remembering what did and didn't work, we're remembering what might be best moving forward. The learning process is going to improve for our target audience. The instructional process can improve for us from a design perspective. When we're designing our next class or helping the next person work with their class, we're going to have a better feel for this target audience and what is or isn't working. So we want to make sure that whatever we create also stays relevant and continues to work to continue to meet the needs of the users in changing times. So the more we're continuing this cycle and iterating, the more we're able to do that, and the more we're able to stay relevant and keep things useful long term, and doing that bit by bit. And within this, I just wanted to mention, we're not going to have time to get too in depth here. This is, again, something that is really important, though, to be empathetic to your users and make sure that we're always designing with accessibility and equity in mind. We want to make sure that everybody has that equal opportunity to be successful. So, keeping that accessibility process in mind and making sure we're creating, learning experience that everyone can access is really important. And again, this pulls in from those ideas of universal design for learning as well. I'm going to share some resources here in a moment that can get into this a little bit more if you're interested. Because like I said, we could spend a whole few hours on this topic alone. But I know we only have a few minutes. The time certainly goes fast in these, but does anybody have any specific questions or things that they'd like me to mention or talk about a little bit further? Okay, so if we don't have any questions at this time, we got a couple just key things to maybe take with you and remember here. That empathetic design process is going to be key to whatever that digital project is. So we want to make things that are going to be impactful and user-centered always. So have that consistently be at the heart of what you're doing. Use empathy to inform your choices throughout, always meeting the needs of that target audience, whatever the setting is. Equitability, accessibility, always in mind. Make sure everybody's going to be able to get in there and use this in the way you anticipate them, and try to bring these in with whatever it is that you're doing. from a perspective of how can I improve this for all of my learners. And I'm going to share, if I might have to, in the chat here. These are all links, but I'm going to share them in the chat in just a second so you have them. While we're thinking about these things and while it's on your mind, hopefully you'll be encouraged to continue the learning process here, and you'll jump out there and maybe look for some new information. And I want to include some resources that I think are good spots to look for that. So I'm going to include the links here. And I'm also going to include my email. If you have any questions, if you'd like the slides that I used today, if you'd like to just talk about any of these things, please let me know. I'm always happy to do that. I want to make sure that we're clarifying anything. I know again we had to kind of go fast today and zip through this, so I'm here. I'll stick around for a little bit if anybody wants to stay or ask any other questions, or certainly feel free to connect through email there. My email is included in the chat. Again, are links to these various resources in my email as well. I appreciate everyone's time, and just being here says a lot about your empathetic approach to what you're trying to do. So continue that, keep that going, and I appreciate all of you and everything that you're doing. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Dan. I'm going to stop the recording.